Hey everybody! Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. I am Suzanne, brand manager at Fellow Traveler, and today I am joined by Patrick!
Hello!
Patrick, if you somehow do not know, is the creative lead at Chance Agency, who are the wonderful people behind NeoCab.
Yeah. It's true. Yay. That's us. We're doing it. We're making it.
And I know it looks like I'm on the surface of the sun. The sun has not been out all day, and now it just came out, which is why the lighting has changed in my room. But anyway, today we are talking a little bit about NeoCab. If you somehow missed it, NeoCab had a really exciting time at GDC this past week. Patrick, what happened?
Well, we announced that we were shipping on Nintendo Switch, which is just a huge, it was awesome. We got to be with Nintendo and 8 other really awesome indie games for their Nindies, like sort of spring. Felt kind of like a spring fashion show, you know. There's a big Nintendo wall, and there was just like fabulous game devs, and it was just so cool to be a part of it.
Yeah. That was easily the most excited that I've ever been watching a Nindies stream, live video, whatever they're called, Nindy Direct. I was like, when is it going to come? And I think it was the 3rd video, which...
Yeah, we were up really early. It was like Cuphead, one other game, and us. I was like, good company.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I can't wait. Oh my God, there it is. Oh. Yeah, so why is it coming to Switch?
Well, gosh, so many reasons. First, I want to say that it's definitely a dream of like almost every single person on the team to have made specifically a Nintendo game. I think that everyone who grew up in the 80s, home video games were Nintendo, and Nintendo has also like consistently been the most innovative in terms of like what games can be and who games are for, you know. Like Nintendo it's always been important for like games are for everyone in like a very meaningful way. And so for all of us just being like, we are like one of our writers, Robin Sloan, wrote a great tweet where he's like, if I could go back in time and tell 6-year-old me that someday I would be writing dialogue that would be shipping on a Nintendo console, he would like flip out and not believe me, and you know. And I think that was true for like the artists as well, and just basically everyone involved. It's like, it's a dream. It feels like just a different, like, it's just different playing on, and then specifically Switch as a mobile console. The most mobile console, but delivering like a desktop level experience is super cool. We think NeoCab, we've always wanted to picture people playing it like in bed or on the bus, or you know, like all the places where you want a good story, but you don't want to be like sitting down in front of your TV monitor or something.
Yeah, like, you know, you're just, I don't know, playing Switch. So I am very lucky. I am one of the few people who has already played NeoCab on the Switch. Yeah. Oh, you have a pretty one.
I got the reds and blues finally.
Oh, not fair. That the idea of, and I had a great time. I was just hanging around in my apartment. I mean, I was playing the game, also looking for stuff, but you know, just being able to literally load up. Can't say anymore, but
there it is. There, it's real.
Yeah, it's real. It's really on there. Yeah. It's playing right now, but you can't have it.
It's so cool to be able to talk about it. It's been secret for so long.
But
this has been in the works for like, gosh, at least 6 months, maybe more. I have no sense of time. Game dev isn't endless now. But yeah. It's open about it now.
That's a lot of hard truth in there. It isn't endless now. Yeah, but yes, this has been a long journey getting NeoCab onto Switch, and I mean, I did forget to mention, if you guys have any questions, hey Adasergey, hey Darkstar, in the chat, feel free to shout them out. Patrick is here to answer all your NeoCabby questions. But how is it really easy? Is it real easy to get a game on Nintendo Switch?
It's a very different platform for where we started. So like our programmer Joel Davis, who's been making games for like 15 years easily, he always says like you have to pick one from the outset. Are you gonna make the the sort of minimal performant version first and then like scale it up and make it beautiful later? Or are you gonna make a beautiful like glitzy version first and then make it performant later?
Right.
And in our case, we decided to do the glitzy version first and then make it performant later. And there's no right way to do it, and I'm actually happy we did it the way we did, but it does mean that there's a set of challenges where it's you have to start looking at removing things first. So like when we first took our, like my PC that I develop on is like a VR rig with like, like sick GTX dual, it's like a ridiculous machine. It's not a consumer machine. And when we first put the build on Switch, it was literally 4 FPS. So, but it worked. That was the cool part, was like we were, like I was able to spend like a couple days just fixing compiler errors in Unity. And we had a build that was like crappy, but working. And then it was just a matter of like pulling things out piece by piece. And we also worked with a great firm called Disparity, who really were a huge help in just teaching us, like they've shipped Switch games before and we haven't.
Yeah.
So yeah, figuring out like how to optimize our giant city with all these build, we did a whole LOD pass, which Unity camera effects like maybe were just too expensive. So yeah, we eventually got it to, it's like a really smooth 30 FPS almost across the board, and it feels great. It feels so great on Switch now.
Yeah. And oh, wait, no, I just lost my train of thought. Where'd it go? I was going to say, Disparity is our good friends of ours. And it's funny how no matter what, no matter how long you've been doing this, there's still always somebody who you might need to ask for suggestions or guidance. And that's just a never-ending lesson that I know I'm learning. Yeah.
And it's so important to be able to to sort of offload that, because we were still, furiously making the game and writing and designing new characters while the port was going on, and we would not have been able to hit this target without their help. So,
yeah.
Thank you, Verity.
Very good. Darkstar asks if there are any compromises or changes that you had to make in order to make it work on the Switch, design-wise or technical.
It's a good question. I would say the thing that hurt the most was just having to spend some artist time to make that low LOD city. So we designed our whole set of buildings once, and that worked on a PC, but it's just too many polygons for a device that needs to be battery efficient. Mm-hmm. And that's not specific to the Switch. It's like the work we did there is going to help us maybe eventually come to mobile someday, or maybe come or it made the game work kick-ass on like one of our writers has a 2012 MacBook. Yeah. And suddenly the game worked, right? So but it hurt to have to do that work, because work that could have been gone into making new buildings was going into making lower poly versions of existing buildings. So that's just an artistic time trade-off that I wish we didn't have to make. But
I'm imagining that just hurting the heart of Vincent.
Yeah,
art
director. Yeah.
On NeoCab at Chance Agency.
Totally. Yeah. We definitely wish we could have had, we got a lot of diversity out of the city, a lot of different building types, and Lisa Flack, our 3D artist, was fantastic. Mm-hmm. But it's got to be smooth, right? So those are just trade-offs you have to make. Other than that, I would say it's actually interesting. The game really feels almost identical between the two platforms, and what differences there are subtle, and I almost wouldn't say one is better than the other. It's just subtly different. In a weird way, the game looks sharper on Switch, mm-hmm. and it looks more fuzzy and gauzy on PC. That's the only difference. And it's always it's the far background scenery. The stuff in the car is almost 100%.
Yeah, it's almost like you notice different elements of the same art style, that it almost looks not more cartoony, but I know what you mean by more crisp on the Switch, whereas it looks glossier on a larger screen. Right. Kind of just works both ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I enjoyed button pushing on the Switch. Very much enjoyed.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. The controls are so much better.
They're fun.
Yeah.
It's very much, I mean, this is very much a game that you can play on PC or Mac with point and click. It's a clickable game. But there is something kind of nice about using a controller and being like, button. I mean, I love buttons. It's a person to person thing.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Agent is curious if there will be VR to complement NeoCab at some point.
Not in NeoCab 1, no.
That's fair. NeoCab 4.0.
Right. Yeah, NeoCab 2 will be an exclusive VR experience. I'm just joking. I actually have made some VR prototypes, and I have a lot of like opinions on what makes a good VR game, and it's such an intense design constraint that I don't think we would have been able to tell this story in VR. That's
totally fair. But that's a great question. Thank you. Ada Sergey also asks, I want to know about the main inspiration or the eureka moment of where the game came from. So, that's their question. Sorry, I started to read their second question.
Well, the first concept did have kind of a eureka moment where I was with my friend Robin Sloan, who's also a writer on the game, and a really amazing novelist and just a really clever guy. You should follow him on Twitter. And we were getting together to talk about games. Like we wanted to do a game project, and I was just finishing up Firewatch, and we first thought we wanted to do an RPG source book, actually. It was like we just got together to like make lunch at his house in Oakland and make his RPG source book. And we kept finding like it was like a cool idea, but it kept appearing to us that like people weren't actually going to play this game. The game mechanics weren't there. It was like the story wasn't there. And the things we were talking around were like, we want a game that's played on a map. We love like, we're those kind of nerds where when you open up, you're at the sci-fi, and I bet you're the same way, Suzanne, right?
Yeah.
You're like at the sci-fi or fantasy shelf in the bookstore. If you open it up and it has a beautifully detailed map of the world, you're like, okay,
yes.
I want to go here, right?
Yeah. You're like, oh my God, I care. I suddenly care so deeply.
There's a world in here, right? It's not just like a few stories, just that feeling of like being able to visit a place. So the game we have been talking about, the RPG source book, had been all map elements, and then but it wasn't working. And then we're just walking back into the house, and there was like this bolt from the blue where I was like, do you know who lives and dies on a map are Uber drivers and Lyft drivers. And I live in San Francisco, and I come from the tech world. And I just immediately started thinking of how gamified Uber and Lyft drivers' lives are, where like you're making these fractions of a penny, and they're changing based on which district you're in, and the time of day it's constantly fluctuating, and everyone's giving me ratings all the time. And I love games with like rich story mechanics, so I immediately, that was the moment where it was just like, oh, every time I have a conversation, it's like a little puzzle or a little game where that person is going to give me a rating at the end, and I have to sort of please them, but I also have to stand up for myself. And it's crazy how once that mechanic of like star rating and like surviving as a driver with like meeting strangers came, then everything else followed really quickly around emotional intelligence, around an emotional mechanic from like standing up for yourself, and like all the inspirations started to appear on the horizon where you could drop them.
Yeah, and emotional intelligence has become an enormous part of the game, certainly of the setting, which makes perfect sense given I don't even want to think about the day-to-day of an Uber or Lyft driver. But that does lead me neatly into a different question that Ada Sergey also asked, which is, what do you think about the future of transportation and apps like Lyft and Uber? And I know you have thoughts about this. You have tweeted about this.
I can't read my mind. I can't read the tea leaves, but I can say that we're in a race for the bottom right now. And don't get me wrong, I use Lyft. I think they're like the slightly less evil of the two, but both of them are a poor substitute for good public transportation, I would say. But I tweeted something last week where someone had calculated, like, I think Uber had shifted their per mile pay to 58 cents a mile.
Okay.
And it was 60 cents a mile, and the cost of driving a car and maintaining it and fueling it is 58 cents a mile. So essentially, like that's algorithmic capitalism right there. Is like the machine figures out this is like literally the least we could pay you per mile, and not have you like completely quit or make it like economically impossible. It's like just on that line. And so that's scary. I think that was one of the, like the cyberpunk aspects that also came in early, was like, how much worse is this going to get once like Uber and Lyft go self-driving?
Yeah.
Right. And how much more we're like less worried about machines starting to become conscious and like talk like humans. Like that's not what our game is about. It's way more about a world where people start treating humans like machines, you know? So there are people in NeoCab who get into the car and just like talk to Lena like she's another robot, you know, like, so that, I guess that's our like cautionary tale aspect.
We don't like those people.
Yeah.
But yeah. And it's funny, I mean, it bears mentioning from an international standpoint, that when you go abroad, all of those things change. I mean, they don't have Lyft anywhere, I think anywhere except the US. It's entirely a US company.
That sounds plausible, yeah.
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 I normally ride Lyft and yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I normally ride Lyft, and I went to Canada and realized that I couldn't get a Lyft. I had to get an Uber. So, yeah, there's a difference.
I talked to a really smart Chinese journalist at GDC, and it was really cool. He had a lot of great questions. He was like, this game will do really great in China because this is our life now. Like if you lives in Beijing and you can't own a car, there's just no space for cars. So every day, he's driving like Didi, which is their like state-run version of Uber, and every day it's just a series of Didi rides from point to point. And if you've ever seen the rigs like some of these drivers have, it's crazy. They'll have like an iPad and like 3 different phones, and they're all wired together, you know. They're like to get like he's like working Postmates and Didi at the same time. It's this crazy gamified hustle, and it feels very cyberpunk, but it's just like now. Yeah.
Yuhoi asks a wonderfully open-ended question that you could take a myriad of ways, which is, what was a surprising challenge that you did not expect?
Oh gosh, so many.
I
mean, this is true for every game dev ever. Like, you never know what you're really making until you've been at it for like a while, like maybe a year. So many challenges. Like, the trade-offs between quality and quantity on the art pipeline, I would say, is a big one. We like just if you want things to look as great as we did, you have to start. Basically, you just can't make things at a clip. So like when we first started the game, we thought maybe we wanted 100 characters in the game, and that was like obviously an arbitrary number pulled out of the blue. But it was like, but we also wanted them to look great and for the vibe to feel like you're in a car at night with the lights coming in, and we wanted a rich emotion system where you could read the players' emotions right on their faces and have that stack with like body movement and all that stuff. And like a lot of that stuff we had to write, basically all that stuff we had to write from scratch.
Yeah.
So, you know, so that was just a challenge of constantly revising the scope based on new things you learn about what your game is and how long it takes to make like a unit of content, like a character or a story. And generally it's going to take longer than you thought.
Yeah, it's always going to take longer than you thought is what I've come to learn. Every single thing.
Yep.
Answering this quick email is going to take.
Great, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like I think our game is better because we have 20 really well thought characters. Like, we made every character count as a result, instead of just being like, you know, like our early ride pitches now feel so weak to me when I go back and read them in a document. There's ones that are, you know, they're the equivalent of like, I don't know, like a really busy guy who's trying to get to a meeting is really, you know, anxious and terse, and it's like, that's not a character. That's barely an SNL sketch. Yeah. I
mean, fair. That, which is great. If you played a demo of the game earlier, it might have changed. It probably has changed, improved since then. By the time you get to the final game, actually, Darkstar does ask about the characters. Are there any real life inspirations for the characters that ended up in NeoCab?
Yes, that's such a good question. There are, and from a couple different angles. So
It's gonna
visually,
be really good or really bad for some people that you know, depending.
I'm happy that I didn't steal anyone I know personally. And but our art director does about 50% of the time he starts drawing from life.
Mhm.
So some of the characters in the game, they're initially based on people he knows, friends of his who have a great face or a great look, and he starts there, and then it evolves into a different direction. But it's cool. It's fun when you actually then like later on meet somebody, and it feels like you're meeting someone from a fictional space. You know, that actually yeah, that happened to me on The Walking Dead once. Like I was at a party from the two dudes who like made the Walking Dead game, season 1, and I had no idea they based one of the characters completely off of their friend. And so I go into this party and I meet this dude and I'm like, dude, I threw you from a moving train. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I feel so bad.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it was really strange. But I digress.
Oh.
And then yeah, we also have lots of story inspiration. We've heard from real Uber drivers, real Lyft drivers, Postmates, all of these like gig work professions. We've talked to them about like what is your worst experience? What's the experience that made you believe in humanity again? Like when did you feel scared? Who's the coolest person you met? We asked a lot of those questions, and a lot of those ideas loosely found their way into a story.
Is there anyone from the NeoCab Chance Agency team who exists, is memorialized within NeoCab?
In a lot of little ways, yes. Like there's a real tendency, like street names will be named after someone on the team or someone, the names of buildings and stuff. So that kind of thing. But other than that, no. I find it's you don't want to get too close to reality, because then you might need, like, the character might turn out to be an asshole.
Right.
And I would feel really bad if I named a character after my best friend and then everyone in the world hates that character.
Yeah. That could be awkward. That's fair.
Yeah.
And actually, Agent M83 has a good question whether NeoCab, not Neopunk, but NeoCab is an evolution of the cyberpunk genre.
That's a great question. Yes and no. No, because from the get-go we were like, we're not trying to make a cyberpunk game. We were like, we don't want to just because, like, well, personally, I don't love genre. I think genre it's like a shorthand, but it also can really collapse the possibilities of what something can be, Like, it's not a great place to start a novel or a comic or even like an album being like, I want to make a great post-punk album or whatever, So from the get-go, Vincent and I were like, we don't want to just like ape the cyberpunk style. And I'm glad, because when we started this, like 2.5 years ago, is when we first started talking about it.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk was like kind of almost dead. Like Blade Runner 2049 was far from coming out. There certainly wasn't like Cyberpunk 2077 on the horizon, didn't exist. There's just a lot less content. And so I'm really glad that we decided to do something different. The color palette, I would say, is the thing that's most influenced by that. We love the way a cyberpunk city feels. Like, if you look at the work of Liam Wong on Instagram, he's like a brilliant photographer and game designer.
Yep.
And like that stuff feels cyberpunk, but it's just reality. It's just, a real city. So we wanted to stay grounded like a Liam Wong photograph early on, and not be like, we need a 50-foot tall holographic woman, or, like flying cars. Like, we could have done all of those things, but we wanted to be restrained and make it feel like a real place that you could draw a line from here to there. So like we started calling it now punk early on. We're like, it's just like our reality has already become cyberpunk. So this game,
we're pretty close.
Yeah.
It's a very blue city. For me, that's the first thing I noticed when Liam Wong. I just shared that link to his Twitter anyway in chat, because, in fact, I've seen you and whoever's running the NeoCab account chatting about how Liam Wong's art Which, of course, is not necessarily looking at NeoCab. That's just his wonderful, amazing art style. But how similar those color palettes are, and how they're both portraying cool, sort of sci-fi cities, but also just now cities that are thrown through this cool prism and coming out very similarly out the other end.
Right.
But yeah, it's it's that mind meld thing going on that people are thinking about this and looking at cities this way.
Totally. Yeah, and he's not the only reference for sure, but it was a major one. And actually, Kim Belair, who's an amazing writer on the NeoCab team, is actually friends with Liam, and we did end up naming one character Liam as a sort of like a little
Oh, I did not know that's where Liam's name. I love Liam, and you will too.
Yeah.
Liam's great.
He's one of the like reliably sweet
and
friendly characters in the game.
Yep. Awesome. Darkstar asks about who did the music for the game, and I mentioned in chat that who did the music, but what can you tell us about this wonderful person? Also, say their name, because I think I mispronounce it when I say it.
I found out only after getting to meet Joe, who's the man behind the music, that I've been saying it wrong too. Is obfusc.
Obfusc.
I think it's short for like obfuscated.
Sure, that makes sense.
Right.
Now that I think about it for a second, yeah.
Yeah, but it's actually a fun story how we met up and like how that started. So I love instrumental music, and I used to do a weekly radio show on a station out here called BFF.FM that's called Warm Focus, and it was just 2 hours every week of like blended instrumental music to work to, because like I need instrumental music to focus, and I know a lot of people are the same.
YouTube's low-hi pop, faux pop, whatever it's called, playlists will agree with you.
Right. And everyone's got their own like style, but like for me it was always like laid back but not too laid back, electronic but not like techno-y. It's like a certain blend. And I started playing Obfusc because he was on the Monument Valley soundtrack, and I love that soundtrack. It's so good.
It's so pretty.
And so like I found his other stuff on Spotify, and I was playing it a lot, and then like I started doing a thing where when I played music, I would like find the artist on Twitter if I could and shout them out. It's like a shameless self-promotion thing, like listen to my channel because you're on it. And we started chatting, and it just turned out he was like the most friendly guy, and also loved the exact same style of music that I was playing on the show. So he became a listener and would like also recommend tracks, and it was always good stuff. So it was just like a great vibe. And then I announced on the show when I decided to do NeoCab that I basically was like, I'm quitting the show so I can like focus on making a game. And this is right when Firewatch was about to ship. Yeah. And he was like, what are you doing next? And I was like, I was just like super excited. I basically immediately like, oh, we're making a game and it's about the future and your music will be perfect. And so like he was almost one of the very first people to start thinking about the game at all. Wow. And that was so cool. And I would really recommend that if you have friends who are musicians and you're making something, if there's a way to collaborate early, it was so great because he would ask great questions about the vibe and the like feeling and what it's about. And it's so great to talk in game dev terms at that level instead of specific mechanics and all the nitty gritty. And then we would listen, the writers could listen to his soundtracks while writing.
Wow.
Like, it's like a feedback loop where like the writing feels like the music feels like the writing. So like, it was crazy. He's so, he's brilliant. And I hope he's listening now. Hey, Joe, like we had maybe like 4 rides written for the game, and he had like a full album.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He had like 20 tracks.
And a little bit of that album is playing in the background in case you don't
hear it.
I don't know if it comes through for you for some reason. I've also got it on pretty quiet because I was worried that I would accidentally drown us all out.
As long as chat can hear it.
Yeah. I hope you guys, I just turned it up a little bit.
So we actually did talk a second ago about cyberpunk and how that is and isn't necessarily where NeoCab, but what about, were there any books or other stories that you took as inspiration?
Yeah. Books specifically. A little bit of Close to the Machine by Ellen Ullman, I would say. She captures the experience of being like a programmer and being like a human who touches a machine-made system in a really, really good way.
Yeah.
So there's no one who's like directly like that in the game, but I do think that vibe. She's also in San Francisco in like the 90s and the first .com boom, and like it's a great book that just captures that experience of being like a really smart cog in a very weird system. So I recommend that.
Yeah.
And then I think a lot of people on the team have read different cyberpunk and noir stuff over the years, I would definitely say. So like for, I know Paula, our writing lead.
Paula Rogers, very, very lovely, cool person.
Yeah, also a very lovely, cool person. I know like she was reading My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante while doing this, and that's about an intense female-female friendship. Which our game also features, and also since she recommended that book 2 years ago, I think it's now an HBO series, which is supposed to be really great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Kim Belair has recommended all the any noir stuff, specifically what is it? It's like a classic San Francisco detective mystery, like a Sam Spade mystery.
Okay.
The name is escaping me now, but like I love Dashiell Hammett stuff.
Yeah.
And then of course like you can't write cyberpunk-y stuff without first reading William Gibson. So like.
Yeah. That's that one I know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, thank you, Sly Parkour, for that question. And Agent M83 said, I did actually see a still from the game the other day that made me do a double take because a passenger looked exactly like me. Please tell me who that was, because now I'm very curious. Because now I want to go look at it.
Yeah. I'm curious as well.
Let's see. I just had a question in front of me. Oh yeah, Tabs, who is Justin from our Discord. Hey Justin. Asked if there is a certain passenger where you had difficulty getting a read of their mood.
A read on their mood?
Yeah. During play, did you struggle writing? I think what he's asking is, did you struggle writing any particular passenger and how the interaction would go?
That's a great question. I mean, one of the challenges I think with our passengers is because a lot of them are supposed to be a challenge, you love the character, but you don't want to make them a total asshole, you know? Mm-hmm. And so making someone who's difficult at first, but who the player can grow to love is really, really hard. But it's a good challenge, I would say, because it forces you to like buck cliches. You know, like so many movies like that are clumsy or just first draft, you know, the minute someone appears on screen, you're just like, I'm going to like this person, I'm going to like them for the rest of the movie. Or someone shows up and they have like a British accent and kind of a mean scowl, and you're like, oh, the villain, you know? So for us, a lot of people had to start a little bit problematic or difficult, and then hopefully that relationship could evolve. So that's tough. We also, the whole conceit of the game is difficult because you're always meeting strangers for the very first time.
Yeah.
And your stories don't really immediately intersect in most cases, you know, like they need something out of like this human cab driver experience, but they don't know your story and you don't know theirs. So starting from absolute zero like that is also a huge challenge that I'm just so impressed that our writing team was able to get dialogue this good and compelling with those constraints without being able to lean on like, oh, it's my best friend, or, you know, like I'd do anything for my brother, or like that kind of like you know, the Fast and the Furious type of like
like a title card comes up like Suicide Squad. Hi, my name is so and so, and these are the three most important things you need to know.
Exactly. Yeah, just like Suicide Squad, Scott Pilgrim. Like, that would be so nice, but also not.
And also a little bit takes you very much out of the moment. That's a different vibe.
Yeah. Paula is always talking about narrative distance as something we want to decrease. Like we don't want the story. We want you to feel identified with Lena as a character. We want you to feel emotionally aligned with her, and so we don't use all these other techniques. Like we don't really use flashbacks or flash forwards.
Right.
We don't, we don't. We have internal narration, but it's very rarely of that type where it's like years later I would remember back at this as an important moment in my life, or Liam was always saying this at that time. It's always like in the moment.
Yeah, there's no, dear reader, this is when I knew that little did he know, etc.
Totally, no fourth wall breaking. Yeah.
Yeah. You are Lena, and you are experiencing. So Agent M83 came back in chat and shared his Twitter and their Twitter, and Agent M83 is Liam, basically.
Hi, Agent M83.
Looks very much like Liam, so
cool.
Sorry for accidentally.
And Liam in the game, not Liam Wong, right?
Correct, Liam in game,
like
yes, which I think showed up in one of Nintendo's stills of the game. So yeah,
yep.
That's interesting.
He's the person you meet in the desert at the very beginning. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's good to know.
Cool. Yeah.
Slideparkour also asks if there are any experiences within the game that are outside of the cab, and I think we might just say yes.
Yes,
and
there are.
Leave it at that.
I don't think that's a spoiler at all. They are. I will say, most of the story is all about that experience within the kind of intimate confines of a cab, and like there's a type of storytelling that only really happens there, I think. And we got lots of great references from like film and stuff there, but it's cab stories are cool, and that's the thrust of the game. But Lena does need to get out of the cab occasionally, and there are 5 different sleep locations where are these sets where you choose where to sleep at night, and each one is their own little story. So those are places where kind of I don't think I'm saying too much, but stop me if you think I think I'm feeling good. I would just say that each place is its own. If the cab rides are the character is the story, the sleep locations the location is the story. And so in the same way that if you keep picking up the same passenger, their story advances in our game. If you keep sleeping in the same place, you learn more about that place. So we've got I won't spoil too much, but we have a lot of cyberpunk and non-cyberpunky locations there, and they all have different effects on your emotional health. And then we also have a case of where you visit for characters. So
exactly, and your single it is very much of a branching narrative story, and your experience throughout the game will likely not be the same as someone else who's playing the game. Although you can always go back and check out the stuff you missed. It's
impossible to get the same way through twice.
Yeah.
There's just choices from who you meet, what order you meet them in, what you say, what your emotional state is at the beginning and end of the ride. All those things change nearly every line of dialogue in the game. So it's basically every playthrough is vastly different.
Yeah.
And personalized, I would say. We try really hard to give you the choices that could reflect how you might really want to respond in a moment. With that, that belief that the more we give you choices that feel I got to make the choice that I wanted here, the more your Lena feels like your Lena and not somebody totally foreign.
Yeah. And I like the way that Agent M83 puts it, where you get closer to the city as a character, as its own character. You have your own experience.
Yeah, that's very true.
One other question from Tabs, from Justin. Has anyone on the team gotten so invested in their star rating that they really tried to keep a 4.6 average rating? And this is if somehow you've never had an Uber or Lyft account. I know that there are ways that you can check your rider rating as well as your driver rating, and there was a period of time where I was very nervous that anyone might possibly be upset with me, and I would keep checking my rider rating, and if it got below 4.5 stars, I go, oh God, I was mean to somebody and didn't mean to.
Yeah, I mean, since we do believe that the game in some way measures your emotional intelligence. Some rides more than others, absolutely, but there are some rides where subtle clues that believe that people with a higher emotional intelligence will have a higher star rating, and that's kind of cool. Like, there's a lot of games that prove you're like really, really good at aiming, or like really, really good at like making precise jumps. So I'm excited to have a game where you're to some degree rewarded and measured for your ability to read people and to know how to respond to them, because it's a really important skill in life, and yeah, not a lot of games play to that skill.
Yeah, totally. Which I very much enjoy, the emotional intelligence aspect of the game, and it's one of my favorite parts, and I hope that most of you who are watching and are excited for this game will feel the same way. We are just about out of time. Also, big thank you for everybody. I know that the stream just hiccups for some of you for like a second, so sorry about that. But yes, we are out of time, sadly, unless anyone has a question that they fire out really fast within like 2 seconds. But going once, going twice. But Patrick, this game is coming to very soon.
Yes.
At an undisclosed date. I was waiting. Release date. It's my agent. Release date. The release date has not yet been announced for this title, but it is coming to Nintendo Switch as well as to PC and Mac via Steam. And that there will be more on that. If you want to get more updates, definitely follow at NeoCabGame on Twitter. Post all of their updates there. You can also join our Discord channel, the Fellow Traveler Discord channel, at discord.gg/Fellow Traveler. Traveler has 2 L's. And there you can chat with some of the Chance Agency team, you can chat with the Fellow Traveler gang, and that's also where we often give a little bit of sneak peek on updates about all of our games that are coming out. So I hope to see some of you there. And Patrick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, super fun. Thanks for all the great questions, guys. And thanks, Suzanne, for leading this awesome channel.
Yeah, it's so easy.
Do you do this is this a weekly thing of this exact same bad time, same bad channel?
This is exactly same bad time, same bad channel, except for last week because everyone was at GDC and we were busy.
Right.
But yeah, we do try to do this. We will also definitely be keeping this up through Ludonarracon, which you know about, right? If you want to know more about the narrative video game focused digital convention, that's a mouthful. Ludonarracon, where narrative meets play. Definitely check out ludonarracon.com, which I will post in the chat right now. If you want to learn more about that and maybe get involved, we'll be streaming every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time up until that point at least, which is in May.
Great.
So,
Awesome.
all right, well, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you all next time.
Yeah.
Bye.